Hey everyone, welcome to the BPD Bunch Brunch, where we get together with our favorite brunchy beverages to catch up, play games, and talk about all things BPD. I'm your host, Xannie, and today I am here with Raf. Raf, where in the world are you coming from, and what is your brunchy beverage for the day?
We are in Melbourne, where it's rainy. I can't show you. It's a rainy spring day. My brunchy beverage is just iced water because I already had my protein shake and creatine and salt. So now I need to have a liter of water to make sure my body is okay after that.
Hydration Station. I'm coming to you from New Mexico in the United States, and I have got mint tea in my fabulous cat ghost mug.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, this is the cutest thing I have ever seen.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so good.
Today, Raf and I are going to wrap up the conversation on BPD betwixt the genders.
Betwixt the gender gap.
If this or other BPD-related topics interest you, please make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you do not miss a single episode. So the focus of our conversation today is obviously in the men and women episode. We were, for the sake of simplicity in the episode, delineating male and female and sort of what the research says and our experiences. By the way, if you want to check out some of the research, definitely go watch that episode. We will be referencing some of it in this one. So to start us off, Raf, how would you define your gender identity?
Gender nonconforming is basically my gender identity. Gender itself has so much weight to it in its expectations and how you present, how you talk, how you do almost everything in your life. And those expectations, since I was little, never really sat with me properly. And over time, particularly like I think 5 years ago, in my mid-20s, no, in my late 20s, I'm older than that a lot. Yeah, I had the realization specifically when someone just referred to me as like they, them, just in a gender neutral way. I felt this like weight fall off my shoulders, and I was just like, oh, that felt so much better than he, him. And then years go by realizing that it's not necessarily like liking or disliking he, him, she, him, or whatever more. It's more just enjoying the freedom of not having to subscribe to the gender binary and basically acting, presenting, and being however I want it to be. So yeah, gender non-conforming. I will kind of just do whatever I want whenever I feel like it, because that's what feels good in my body.
So after hearing some of the research about how BPD presents in men and women, obviously, for the sake of studies, there's already so few people who are available for studies, and then even fewer of them are gender nonconforming. So unfortunately, like, it's stuck in the binary for the sake of the research. But after hearing some of that research, what are your thoughts? Is any particular experience resonate with you more than the others?
I think, interestingly, all of the experience does register for me as familiar in some sort of way. Within myself, kind of flowing between, I guess, what we call like masculine femme presentations. So I would, when I was younger, much younger, have those outwardly like sort of aggressive, masculine sort of expressions of BPD. Also having issues with substance abuse and that sort of stuff. And as I've kind of grown and as my gender identity or presentation sort of changed, the BPD presentation also changed. I would typically have sort of those unstable relationships or you cling onto unhealthier relationships, we'll call them. But then also having sort of like body dysmorphia and issues with food and all that sort of stuff. It was kind of interesting, particularly to look back on everything and see the, I want to say, correlation of presentation also kind of working with how my gender presented at that time. I think a lot of the expectations that we spoke about before with gender end up sort of reinforcing the actual presentations that we see when we're looking at how BPD presents within genders. It makes me even stronger in my resolve that like gender, the masculine feminine thing just isn't a thing. It doesn't exist. It's Sorry, I shouldn't say that. It does exist. It is a thing, but it is prescribed. It feels prescriptive as opposed to descriptive. So does the research resonate with me? It does. But also as somebody who has never really been able to find themselves within the gender binary, that resonance has kind of been more data or more information to me, realizing the shortcomings of A, how we view BPD and gender, and B, how we just view gender at all.
So how do you think your gender identity intersects with your BPD symptoms?
Yes, the intersection between like my symptoms and gender were quite direct, I would say, in the sense that if I were around people who would typically see me as masc, so people who knew me when I was younger, um, or around that era, like around those type of people in general, the outward sort of angry expression of those BPD symptoms would be intensified because it was more or less allowed. It would be like, we get angry, eat some cement, do all this sort of stuff.
Eat some cement.
Eat some cement. Have a spoonful of cement. Hard enough is that saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah, where with particularly me later in life, when I was starting to shirk those expectations of gender, the expression became, more quote unquote feminine, where it became more about having a way to get out this internalized emotion in a safe way, in a way that's not just safe for me, but safe for everyone around me. So there wouldn't be any angry outbursts. It wouldn't be anything like that. It would be more like hey, I need to soothe what's happening here in a healthier way, whether that be like exercise, talking about it, or calling a therapist and be like, hey, we're going to need 3 sessions in the next 2 weeks because something's happening. The presentation of my BPD symptoms would be much more typical with what you'd expect of each gender, which I think is very interesting because who I am and my biological sex and all that sort of stuff has never changed. That's not been a thing that's wanted to shift or change in me. It was just the presentation of it, of gender, and in turn the presentation of BPD in general. The gender presentation for me was more of an expectations thing, including my own expectations of myself. But right now, we're blaming how it presents on gender, when I don't think that's what's happening. What we're actually seeing is the expectations of how we should present, how we will present.
Would you say that your gender identity had an impact on your recovery journey? And if so, in what way?
Yes, massively. We spoke before about how the expectations of gender were one of the reasons why I was just like, let's just fuck gender off. Feels dumb. Let's not worry about it. Throughout my recovery journey, if you were to give 15-year-old me or 25-year-old me, like 10 years ago me, this same diagnosis in this same journey, depending on what my gender identity was, or my gender expression more so, depending on what that was, would have 100% changed how I approached my recovery process. And that is in the data. I probably wouldn't have been as forthcoming to the idea of, doing schema therapy, or even considering the most basic part, something like CBD, or considering that, I might be the problem in this situation. Because in being like someone more masculine or whatever like that, there is such a shield I felt like was designed to shield myself from any sort of accountability of what I was doing. And that shield can be created from societal interactions. It's like, no, boys will be boys. This isn't up to you. This isn't because of you. You don't need this help. Just keep on doing your thing. You're fine. But as someone who eventually started presenting more feminine and then started shirking my responsibilities to masculinity, I also noticed a big reduction in that protective shield or wall or barrier that I created around me. So I could eventually be like, yeah, no, I'm the problem here. I'm the one that's doing these things. It's not, the fault of that isn't because someone else did this and because someone else did that. Don't get me wrong, that will have an effect, absolutely. But once that shield was able to come down, I was then able to look more internally and realize, I am holding in all of this pain and all of this stress and all this invalidation from all of my life. The shield that kind of kept the accountability and all that sort of stuff out when I was presenting more masks was also keeping in all of this trauma. I was someone who later in my life, a lot of the BPD symptoms and a lot of like the emotional outbursts and all that were very much internalized in me, which caused a whole bunch of other health issues. If I hadn't have gone through the journey of relinquishing my responsibility to gender, my journey in healing, or whatever you want to call it, would not have happened, or would have started and then would have stopped, and then would have started again and then would have stopped, or would have been much shorter and I would not have got to the place that I am now.
It sounds like detaching from a specific gender identity has helped you to be a lot less judgmental towards yourself. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I've never actually thought of it in that way. Yeah, I would say it has helped me be a lot less judgmental to myself because, again, the expectations that came with gender, like if I, in like my more like masculine days, I guess we'll call it, were to see somebody asking for help, and I did this to myself a lot. Like I refused government payments to help me get through uni. So I was like, no, I've got to do it myself. I had this fucking machismo whole work and do it myself. I would judge that person, but why ask for help? You don't need to do that. You can do it yourself, blah, blah, blah. Deciding not to stick towards like the more masculine presentation absolutely helped me then look inside myself with less judgment, especially in a world where stuff like, mental health and, taking care of yourself and keeping your peace is seen as something that's like more feminine.
So what's something that you wish people knew about the experience of BPD and someone who is gender nonconforming?
If you see someone like an AMAT person, if you see a man, someone who's like born a man, whatever, presenting in a way that is more feminine, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have any sort of issue with anything. It might just mean that's how they feel comfortable looking. That's just how they enjoy dressing and being perceived. Because I think it would be more helpful if the cisgendered world would look at people outside of the gender spectrum without that sort of lens of that person's weird, that person's doing something that I don't feel is right. So therefore there's something wrong with that person. I feel like that's an important thing to get to.
But this is in the realm of BPD, or are you talking people in general?
Both. I think people in general, but I think that can be specific to people with BPD. I think the next part, which is more specific to BPD, I want to say this to people who are sort of outside the gender binary, like me, or people who present a louder version of whatever gender it is they're wanting to express. You're presenting in that way because you want to, because that's how you feel comfortable doing it. You're not presenting in that way because there's something wrong with you. And I think that's something a lot of people outside of the binary struggle with, because for all of our life, we're kind of told, act this way because your genitalia is on the inside, or act this way because your genitalia is on the outside. And that's not just like little behaviors. That's from the colors that you're given as a child when you're 1 month old, to the things that people tell you when you're 2 years, 3 years old, to, aunties and uncles going, oh, they're going to be such a lady killer when they grow up, or, oh, they're going to find a nice boyfriend when they grow up. Like all these expectations that are set, that people outside the gender binary are no longer deciding that they need to uphold. You're not wrong or broken because you've chosen to do that. You've chosen to do that because that's what's comfortable to your body and to your soul, to your spirit. There's nothing wrong with you for choosing to be outside the gender binary. I think it's, if anything, like kind of inspirational to be able to say like, no, I'm not going to do all those sorts of things. I'm not going to uphold a binary that I don't believe in. I'm going to present how I want. Just because you're doing that and it's very different and it's very scary and you're going to feel like an outsider sometimes, you're not doing that because there's something wrong with you. You're doing that because that's what's right in your body. And I think that's what everybody outside of the gender binary could use to help remembering, because I know I struggle with that still every now and then.
Do you have any last thoughts for the audience that you would like to share?
There is a gendered bias towards the BPD diagnosis. That's clear. But I don't want that to be a reason that people shirk or push away a BPD diagnosis. There are problems with it, and there's problems with the diagnosis process. But because those problems exist, it doesn't mean that there isn't help within those diagnoses for you. I got diagnosed with BPD and CPTSD and ADHD and everything at the same time. I was able to accept those diagnoses because I was kind of in a position where I could, because, of my upbringing, of the people that were around me, I could accept that without it affecting my view of myself. For all the people who are kind of worried about getting that BPD diagnosis and it being a gender diagnosis, there's still good in that diagnosis for you. So please don't throw it away, or please don't ignore it because of the stigma or because of those biases that do exist within it. It doesn't determine who you are. It doesn't make you any better or worse of a person. There is still good within that diagnosis for you.
Like we said in the episode on Wednesday, that just because more women are diagnosed does not mean that more women have BPD, and it's estimated that actually the estimated numbers are about 50-50.
Yeah, and based on a lot of the people I talk to, behaviors that I see, men, just because it is a female, there is a bias towards diagnosing women within that. Don't take that as chances are I don't have it. Probably take that as it's more likely that I actually do have it. It's just undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
If women are more likely to get a diagnosis, you're more likely to miss getting diagnosed as a man. So maybe put in more effort to get diagnosed. Just saying.
Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. We hope you got a nugget of wisdom to take with you on your journey. We will be back on Wednesday with a brand new episode topic. If you cannot wait until then, you can... If you can't wait until then, we do have exclusive extended cuts available a week early on our Patreon for our top 2 tiers, our BPD buddies and our BPD besties. So go check that out. Link is down below, and we will see you next time.
Bye.